Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathsala. I am Dr. Rajneesh Ranjan, Disaster Management Expert and VP SkyMet Weathers. Today I am going to elaborate a module on disposal of dead bodies and animal carcass management, which comes under the paper Disaster Management. First of all, let us discuss what could be the learning outcome of this module. While going through this module, you will be able to reflect on dead body and animal carcass management and its significance in post-disaster scenario. You will be able to understand the process of dead body management, to understand the process of animal carcass management and many more. The rationale of this module is that the identification of dead bodies and providing a dignified burial is a crucial part of overall management of disasters. Similarly, animal carcass management is another critical aspect in dealing with the effective disaster management due to medico-legal complications associated with the issue. This module provides you a basic understanding of the dead body and animal carcass management, its necessity and implications. Let us discuss about the management of dead bodies and animal carcass, the basic concepts. The management of dead bodies in post-disaster scenario includes the process of search and recovery, transportation, storage, identification and disposal of dead bodies. In the disposal phase, the identified bodies are handed over to the relatives, while the unidentified bodies are buried in consultation with the concerned local authorities and medico-legal experts. The process is also called Human Remains Management (HRM). In a similar manner, animal carcass management is also the process of disposal of dead animals. The process of dead bodies and animal carcass management is essential in case of deaths due to natural or anthropogenic disasters like earthquakes, floods, riots, etc., as well as deaths resulting from infectious disease like Ebola, foot and mouth disease, etc. The agencies involved in the management of dead bodies during the initial stages are local communities and local organizations. Special search and rescue teams and forensic experts take over after the initial phase and take care of the complicated processes involved in dead bodies management. According to the National Disaster Management Guidelines issued by NDMA in 2010, the key agencies involved in this process includes disaster management authorities, medical and forensic professionals, fire services, police, civil defense, NDRF and other paramilitary forces, NGOs and communities at large. The management of animal carcass is taken care of by the local communities and the local administration. In case of specific requirements, animal welfare bodies, veterinary bodies and organizations with specialized knowledge are also involved in the operation. According to the National Disaster Management Plan 2016, the lead agency for the disposal of animal carcass is the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfares and Department of Animal Husbandry, Dairying and Fisheries with supporting agencies. Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare are also associated dealing with this issue. Now, the question arises, why dead body and animal carcass management is so important? Because Respecting the identity of the deceased and maintaining individuality of the victims is very important during post-disaster situation. The mismanagement or unethical treatment of dead bodies has a profound and lasting effect on the mental health of survivors and communities also. Poor management of dead bodies deny the relatives of the deceased a chance to grieve, which helps in psychological healing and therefore causes additional stress. A systematic identification has significance in the medico-legal context as well as and also assists the family in claiming insurance and inheritance. Dead body management is complex in the functioning as it not only involves the management of bodies remains, but also taking care of the social, cultural and psychological aspects surrounding them. In a large disaster situation, the scenario gets complicated by the number of unwarranted deaths and the destruction of disposal structures. The absence of professional inputs and the lack of proper planning amplifies the issues faced in proper management of dead bodies. In the case of animal carcasses management, medico-legal contexts and biosecurity is also the primary concern. Additionally, dead body and animal carcass management becomes very significant in case of deaths from infectious disease to prevent further spread of the disease to the community or society. When we talk about the existing manuals on the guidelines on the disposal of dead bodies and animal carcass management, the management of dead bodies in disaster situations by Pan American Health Organization PAHO and World Health Organization provide detailed guidelines on this issue. The International Committee of the Red Cross in the manual Management of Dead Bodies after Disasters preferred the term dead bodies over human remains to be less ambiguous. It provides a brief list of key tasks which can be photocopied and distributed among volunteers responsible for dead body management. The disaster management guideline issued by the NDMA also deals with the management of the dead in the aftermath of disasters that not only focuses on the human dead bodies, but also on the animal carcasses and gives standard operating procedures for identification, implementation, logistics, training, response and recovery. It also focuses on the research, development and financing of the support. There are multiple other such guidelines issued by local authorities and departments. While dealing with the dead body management, a case study is utilized to illustrate the issues faced in dead body management post disasters. The Indian Ocean Tsunami 2004. Following the tsunami in December 2004, massive casualties overwhelmed the concerned authorities for dead body management. In a study carried out in countries like Thailand, Indonesia and Sri Lanka, it was observed that different processes were followed by different countries for dead bodies management. A standard framework of management was lacking. In these nations, the first phase of dead body management was uncoordinated and haphazard with multiple agencies involved. Tracking and tracing the bodies became extremely difficult for relatives and family members of the deceased. The sufficient refrigerated storage facilities were unavailable and temporary burial in shallow graves were utilized in some places with the objective of exhuming bodies for identification later. In some cases, dry ice was used, but this led to damage of dead bodies. Dry ice also caused burning of skins of people handling it. Therefore, the bodies were left in the open or buried in mass burials. The identification process of victims also varied in different countries. In Indonesia, simple visual identification process was followed in the initial days. As the bodies started decomposing, there were serious concerns with visual identification. The identification process was then facilitated utilizing telephone SIM cards, ID cards and jewelry. In Sri Lanka, the deceased were photographed and fingerprints were collected, but due to lack of funds, many photographs could not be developed. At a hospital in Matara, digital photographs were taken with basic information recorded in the database like sex, height and body characteristics. Following this process, over 87% of the 547 victims handled by the hospital were identified. Separate processes were followed for foreign tourists also who were buried properly. Future exhumation carried out for dead bodies of identified individuals from 18 different nations. Thailand also followed a systematic process. External examination, personal effects, photographs, fingerprints, forensic pathological examination, dental examination and DNA sampling from bone and teeth were collected and examined. 2010 victims were thus identified, while over 1800 bodies stayed unidentified. Fast disposal of human remains due to health concerns and religious sentiments, mass burial and unsystematic disposal of dead bodies was observed, especially in rural areas where no formal body recovery and remains disposal process was followed. It created severe issues in the identification in later phases. The following key issues were emerged from the above discussions: logistical challenges and lack of available equipments for dead body management, storage of dead bodies in dignified and aesthetic manner, access to and retrieval of bodies, lack of provisions to conduct post-mortem forensic reports to fasten the process of dead body identification and delivering the body to claimants, cultural and religious considerations, legal issues, work related injury or personnel involved in the process were some of the issues. Apart from the above mentioned issues, the following concerns also arise: environmental issues in disposing human remains, issues with the identification of burial, incineration sites including risk of the contamination of water sources, the height of water table or proximity of streams and wells to the burial site is to be considered while selecting locations for mass burial. Let us discuss about the methods and procedures. To address the issues mentioned above, guidelines have been issued by various humanitarian agencies and state disaster management agencies. The common procedures suggested are as follows. According to the NDMA guidelines 2010, community specialized professionals and trained dog squads for the recovery of dead should be used. Large trucks with canopy should also be used to maintain the dignity of the dead during transportation. The dead body should be kept in body bags, and if that are not available, then plastic sheets, shrouds, bed sheets and other locally available materials should be used. Each part of the body of the dead should be treated separately. The body recovery workers should work in two groups. First group to take the body to the place where they are being gathered, and the second team works in identifying the bodies. Location where the body was found must be noted, as it could help in the identification of the dead body. The belongings of the person should not be separated from the person only except during its identification. Body bags, stretchers and trucks should be used for disposing of the dead bodies. Ambulances should not be used, as it helps in carrying the living persons. Specially designed refrigerators are best suited for temporary storage of dead bodies. Without cold storage, decomposition advances quickly. During hot weather condition, the body should be stored for a maximum of 12 to 48 hours. When a storage facility is used, the body should be stored separately or wrapped in a separate sheet and labeled properly for identification. The identification of the body should be done in such a manner that the identification mark cannot be erased. The body should be kept in refrigerator between 2 degrees to 4 degrees Celsius. Big refrigerators which are being used by the ships can be used to store dead bodies of up to 50 persons. Without cold storage, the decomposition advances quickly, and moreover, during hot weather, the body should be stored within 12 to 48 hours. Whichever storage facility is used, the body should be stored separately or wrapped in a separate sheet and label the body properly for identification. The identification of the body should be done properly in such a manner that the identification mark cannot be erased. The body should be kept in refrigerator between 2 degrees to 4 degrees Celsius. The big refrigerators which are being used by the ships can be used to store dead bodies of up to 50 persons. Dry ice can be used, but it should be handled with care. Ice should be avoided. In the absence of refrigerated storage, trench graves can be used. Bodies which are kept underneath the earth's surface remain cool, as the temperature beneath the surface remains cooler than the earth's surface. The body should be buried at a depth of 1.5 meter and at least 2 meter away from the water sources. The body should be laid in one layer only, and 0.4 meter space should be maintained between each dead body. The positions of bodies should be marked at the ground level. While carrying out burial, dead bodies should be marked properly, so that afterwards, when required for any verification, lack of identification may not be a problem of disposal. Identification of dead bodies should be done rapidly after disasters, because after decomposition, identifying dead bodies become difficult and may take a longer time. Some steps which are to be followed during identifications are as follows: like unique reference numbers of a particular format should be assigned to each body or body parts, and no duplicate number should be there. A waterproof label or papers sealed in plastic pouch must be used to write the unique reference number. It should be attached to the body or body parts, and another waterproof label with the unique reference number should also be attached to the container of the body. Photographs should be taken. The unique reference number on waterproof level should be properly visible on the photographs. Uses of digital camera would be easier for the storage and distribution of photographs. Records should be kept about the person with respect to gender, age, personal belongings and marks on the skin. The personal belongings of the person should be kept secure with reference to the unique identification number that has been labeled, and cloths should be left on the body. Based on the identification and supported documents, financial relief from Calamity Relief Fund and National Calamity Contingency Fund by the government shall be provided as per the provisions. There are long-term disposal of dead bodies. All the identified dead bodies should be disposed of or handed over to the family members or relatives of the person based on valid proof, so that the body could be disposed of according to the local customs. The dead bodies which could not be identified may be stored for a longer period of time. Burial is the best way for long-term storage of dead bodies. The site of the burial should be located in suitable place based on the type of soil, water level, etc. The burial site should be acceptable by the community living there and close enough for the community to visit. For permanent burial, depending on the number of bodies buried, the distance from the drinking water sources should vary from 200 meters to 350 meters. If incineration or any other practice is the culturally accepted way of dead body disposal, it should be followed unless it poses any risk. Other factors to be considered during dead body managements are: unless death of the victim is from any contagious disease like cholera, plague, etc., the dead body cannot spread epidemic. The Pan American Health Organization and WHO states that there is no evidence of disease spreading from dead bodies, as the victims of natural disasters die in trauma, drowning, fire, etc., which are not contagious. Contamination of drinking water from fecal matter of the dead bodies poses the risk of diarrhea. Regular disinfection of drinking water can address this issue. Diseases like diarrhea, hepatitis B and C and TB etc. may last for up to 2 days inside the body or victim. Diseases like HIV survive up to 6 days inside the body of the victim. The persistence of the disease causing agents varies across diseases and proper care should be taken accordingly. There is no effect of disinfectants like bleaching powder etc. on the dead body. It can only provide relief from the smell coming out of decomposing corpses. Use of heavy machines and bulldozers in retrieval of dead bodies causes mental trauma to the community and relief workers. Dead bodies should be handled in dignified and sober way. Cremation often destroys evidence for future identification. Cremation also causes logistical issues. Unless cremation is the accepted religious and cultural practice, it should be avoided. The unidentified corpses should be buried in individual graves, not only as a basic right of the victim, but also for legal issues that might arise later. Ceremonial processes and dignified management of the dead bodies help relatives and close one of the deceased in the healing processes properly. The practice of grieving and observing cultural and religious events help people concede to the loss. It should be allowed as long as it does not pose any risk and threats. In case of deaths from infectious diseases like Ebola, cholera, etc., community awareness should be generated and practices like washing and kissing the dead body should be prevented in consultation with the health practitioners. The process should vary across the causes of the death. Recommendations for managing dead bodies after natural disasters. Coordination is one of the pivotal aspects and is needed at several levels. Local, regional and national disaster preparedness plans are in place, taking coordination structure into consideration. The ICRC guidelines suggest to nominate an individual as regional or national coordinator and authorize him to manage the dead bodies properly. Establish coordination group to communicate with public and media to help with legal issues, technical and logistical support and issuance of death certificates and liaison with different administrative bodies. Danger to body handlers. Individuals who are handling dead bodies are exposed to some risks when they come in contact with blood and feces of the dead person, dying out of hepatitis B and C, HIV, tuberculosis and diarrheal disease. Dead body recovery teams working in a hazardous environment are at the risk of tetanus and injury. A strict adherence to the guidelines should be ensured in chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear disasters. Precautions that should be taken by body handlers. The teams working in dead body management should follow basic hygiene, wear gloves and boots, wash their hands with soap after carrying dead bodies and before eating, avoid wiping their face or mouth with their hands and disinfect equipments and vehicles after the process is over. Face mask is not necessary but should be provided to prevent anxiety and smell. Recovery from unventilated spaces should be done carefully, avoiding toxic gases. First aid and medical treatment teams should be available. Now discussing about the animal carcasses management. Animal carcasses largely considered as debris is another key concern post disasters. Utilizing two case studies, the difficulties faced in animal carcass disposal primarily in case of disasters like cyclone and flood or in case of infectious animal diseases are discussed here. Where massive numbers of cattle and livestock gets affected is also illustrated. Number one is Texas flood in 1998. In October 1998 surge in San Marcos, Guadalupe, San Antonio and Colorado River bouts, enormous loss of domesticated animals occurred. The late night precipitation made it difficult for agriculturists and farmers to save animals they possessed. Due to huge flooding, more than 23,000 cattle drowned and were lost along with pigs, sheep and horses. TAHC measurements 1998 taken from Ellis 2003 is the reference of this information. Local disaster management authorities were to deal with dead cows lying on the trees, roadsides, inhabitants' patios and garages. Crisis management officials from government bodies entrusted Texas Animal Health Commission TAHC to discard the animal carcass. The carcasses of animals were buried where possible or burnt in air curtain incinerators alongside other waste materials. The relentless tidy up process for animal carcass occurred over a 2-week time frame in 20 districts declared as disaster affected zone. Within 7 to 10 days of the disaster, depending on the outside air temperatures, animal carcass turned out to be excessively decomposed, making it impossible to deal with them with equipments, for example, front-end loaders. Further, the carcasses were found in swamps did not allow the uses of such heavy equipments. The carcasses were now excessively fragile, making it very difficult to even deal with. Due to flooding, it was difficult to find appropriate sites where carcasses could be burned post-retrieval. The authorities faced a massive task in the process of corpse cleanup. The lack of guidelines and pre-existing coordination between TAHC and crisis management officials made the situation worse. Second example is of Taiwan foot and mouth disease in 1997. FMD is exceedingly infectious viral disease of cows, pigs, sheep, goats and all types of deers. Multiple nations have an arrangement of quick butcher of all affected and in contact creatures with serious limitations on the movement of creatures. After butchering, the corpses must be discarded in a biosecure way and all structures and gear completely sterilized. FMD is by and large viewed as a standout amongst the most infectious disease, as the virus can spread in the wind, on individuals, cloths, equipment and in processes, meats and contact with infectious animals. The methods for carcass transfer included burying, rendering and cremation. Up to 202,000 swine per day were annihilated and discarded at the peak of the operations. Military recruits were brought in to complete the culling process. During the operation, a significant number of the armed forces revealed mental trouble and tension requiring medical leave. The key issues emerging from the case studies pertaining to animal remains management are absence of prior exchange and pre-disaster involvement of state disaster management authorities, animal welfare and veterinary groups to designate responsibilities with respect to carcass management, including identification of a lead organization, poorly arranged or non-existent corpse disposal plans and guidelines, including site selection for both carcass gathering and burial or incineration sites. Lack of emergency management officials with adequate knowledge of animal health, short window of time to clean and dispose the animal remains, pollution of drinking water sources, fly control, smell control from exorbitant hydrogen sulfide, possible zoonotic creature to human disease, introduction like leptospirosis, salmonellosis or tetanus. The huge quantity of dead animals that could be present post events like floods or epidemics, public health concerns in case of death from infectious diseases, high amount of body fluids from animal carcass which might contaminate water sources, environmental and hydrological concerns complicating the disposal process, stress felt by emergency workers in handling the dead animals. To deal with the issues, legislative and regulatory frameworks have been formulated for the disposal of animal carcasses. A command and control center would be in charge of the recovery, retrieval, identification and safe disposal. Response would include the retrieval and identification of animal carcasses. A specialized team would coordinate the efforts and identify through photographs for insurance. It is generally organized by the government bodies in coordination with animal welfare associations or veterinary department. Animal carcass is disposed of through multiple methods, but primarily three methods are in practice. Burial, preferred mode of animal carcass disposal in case of infectious disease. It is generally cheap, environmentally cleaner, quick and easy to organize. There are two methods, one is open pit disposal and closed pit disposal, with the latter more preferred as it prevents scavenger intrusions and assists in absorption of smell and fluids coming out of carcasses. Second is incineration. The incineration, if carried out properly, can produce solid waste byproduct which is essentially free of pathogens. Incineration is easy for animals like hogs which have high fat contents, but not preferred for birds with low fat contents and feathers that are hard to burn. There are three methods used in the incineration process. Example, open air methods, biological incineration and controlled burning. Open air burning is the most commonly used method, but it has senior environmental concern. Biological incineration is suitable for low quantity carcass burning. Controlled burning through air curtain incinerators are preferred as they are portable, environmental friendly and can burn large quantities in short time, but they are expensive and not available everywhere. The last one is composting. Composting is defined as the controlled decomposition of organic materials. Compost is considered to be one of the more environmentally friendly forms of carcass disposal because it is in effect a form of recycling. Its initial cost is minimal and the end product can be utilized as fertilizer or soil additive. But its limitation is the long process and it requires monitoring. The other processes are rendering, alkaline hydrolysis, fermentation, deposit in ocean, mounding, etc. The method of carcass disposal shall depend on the type of animal and the cause of death. Logistical considerations should also be taken care of. The final concerns before choosing the disposal site or type of disposal depends on the infectious agents involved, nature and amount of disposable materials. The hydrology, the typology, considerations, fuel availability, site accessibility and discretion of authorities are some of the factors. The National Disaster Management Plan 2016 calls for detailed strategies for close coordination of state government with local agencies for managing the removal or disposal of carcass of animals from the affected areas. So friend, this was all about the management of dead bodies and animal carcass during and after disasters, which is one of the most important components of effective disaster management system. Thank you very much.